I 100% agree with you. The environmental illness and mold toxicity and mycotoxin exposure is probably one of the most underestimated culprits in regards to our physical well-being and the destruction of our immune system.
My name is Michael Rubino. I'm on a personal mission to make sure you don't get sick inside your own home.
I knew there was something wrong. I'm just so relieved there's something that you can do about it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode. I'm your host, Michael Rubino, and today's very special guest is Brandon Faust. Brandon, thank you for taking time out of your busy day, particularly right now with all the storms and everything you have going on, and joining us here to share this important story and information.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. I've been looking forward to getting on a podcast with you for a long time. You know, you're definitely somebody who's a leader in our industry, and I'm glad to chat.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate that. So I want to dive right into, kind of your personal story, because obviously I know it and I want to share with the audience here, but, how you became impacted by air quality yourself, which kind of led that to you, doing what you do today, which is remediating homes.
Absolutely. So my story is kind of twofold in regards to the personal experience of it. When I initially was introduced to the industry in terms of mold remediation, a buddy of mine had asked me to come on board. And initially I wasn't particularly interested, and then he said, well, if you come on board, there's equity involved in being part of this company. So I said, okay, well, that sounds pretty interesting. That all of a sudden the interest level came up. And not too long after that, a few months after that, I had gotten the certification and the training. And then my son was born. My son was a month old, and he started waking up almost like as if he was having an asthma attack, uh, struggling to breathe. And this was a moment that really freaked my wife and I out. We were obviously new parents, and this is our firstborn. And it's like, what are we doing? So she wanted to take him to the emergency room. And my initial instinct was, of course, well, look, based on everything I've been studying, some of the things that can lead to respiratory issues is actually environmental triggers. So based on that, I started looking around the home and found the leak. It was actually behind a wall. My mom had just come to visit because the baby was born. And we found mold growing up a shelving system. And it was basically 2 foot by 2 foot. And it was in the same room where the AC was located. So we got rid of the contaminated material, and then we ended up, obviously fixing the leak, removing the contaminated material, doing a cleanup, and then doing a whole home sanitization, which is the fogging aspect of it. So that made a huge difference. Like for us, that was like a night and day change. Like the next day he slept an hour longer and he had no trouble breathing. So when I went through that, it really made a difference in regards to my doing in-home evaluations and trying to find the actual source of the problem, which is one of the most important elements of mold remediation. But at the time, I didn't realize that I was starting upon a path and a trajectory that would really change my outlook on a lot of things. So there was some things that took place that were absolutely correct with my son, and it was a light bulb moment for me. But the problem is that the company that I was part of at that time was touting a demolition-free mold remediation. Right. And looking on it now, I didn't just do like demolition-free. If you think about it, I removed the contaminated material, I fixed the source, I did a cleanup, and then we sanitized. So you could say it was demolition free, but a lot of the things that you have to do were actually done in that moment. Then you fast forward in 2019, and I was sick. I was having a fever every month. I was having a pain in my chest that would not go away. I was fatigued. I was having a real problem. And I thought that it might be environmental. I ended up doing air samples in my house. The air samples were great. I popped a baseboard. That was fine. So I thought it could be from mold. I did a mycotoxin test. I was off the charts on this particular, 3 different mycotoxins. And I summed it up to basically going into other people's homes and being impacted by, the environment that I was working in. 6 months later, my AC overflows. There's water all over my house. I have continuous flooring. I'm removing the flooring. I get to my master bedroom, and there was a toxic mold called Chaetomium behind the baseboard. And then I started removing drywall, and sure enough, it was in 3/4 of my master bedroom. The one baseboard that I checked behind, there was nothing, but behind everything else it was. So it was just kind of, I picked the wrong place. And after that, I removed the contaminated material, did a full cleanup, did everything that you're supposed to do in terms of HEPA vacuuming, damp wipe, micro cleaning, ended up sanitizing the house, sanitizing the duct system. And then within 3 weeks, all of my symptoms went away. And so that was a point where I had already fogged my house. The air samples were clean. Everything looked good. I thought I was in a safe zone, but in fact, I was in an actual biological warfare zone. So I had a hard pivot at that moment in terms of like, look, I'm not doing this demolition-free mold remediation anymore. If we don't do the full thing, I'm not doing it. And that was pretty much kind of my, really big light bulb moment.
And I appreciate your integrity at that moment, obviously, because, you saw firsthand that it didn't work for you. I mean, maybe it works as advertised in the sense where if you fog and then you do an air test, it's going to look good. But obviously you were still impacted and there was still a
Yeah.
problem behind walls. Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that this fog will fill up the room and get through every crack and crevice and just kill everything. And everything is this utopia now, right? But one of the biggest things that is missing in that whole equation is the fact that something is occurring that's allowing the opportunity for microbial to grow, right? And
Yeah,
unless that's corrected,
absolutely.
and unless the source is actually removed properly, it's going to continuously perpetuate.
Yeah, if you don't find the actual water source, then you're back at it in a week or a month or 6 months or whatever it may be. And it's not just the water source, it's what is allowing the water source to get there. So you have to put on your detective hat to whatever degree and actually, as a building scientist or having building knowledge, look at what's actually causing that water source. And water comes in different forms, right? Obviously, ice is a solid, water is liquid as we know it. But then there's also vapor and humidity, which we have to deal with in a major way here in Florida. So you can have temperature differential where that starts happening with the AC unit, where you get moisture in the AC unit on the ducts. The ducts can sweat. You can have it be really cool and dry inside and moisture want to move in from outside, and there can create, you can have some of that actually move in between walls, which will give, if there's mold behind the walls, it can give it enough moisture that it will actually start growing. Because some people think that if mold is dormant and it's dry, it's no longer a problem. But it absolutely is, because it doesn't take much for it to get enough moisture to start doing its thing in terms of eating and secreting and letting out the mycotoxins in the gas. And that's, something that you have to deal with when you're in a subtropical climate like here in Florida.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you 100,000%. When you were first introduced to the fogging technology, obviously it's a sales pitch, right? You were pitched this amazing product that works. What were some of the things that you were told and that you saw when you actually used it and in practice just didn't really measure up to what you thought it was?
Well, I think that, the fogging technology that we were introduced to was, the concept we had was that we were going to revolutionize the industry, and that traditional remediators were basically taking advantage of people and overcharging people and doing things that didn't need to be done, and that this new breakthrough technology was going to change everything. And that's what we thought. And what we saw, when we were doing it, was that there was times that it was actually very effective in terms of dropping the levels. Okay. The problem is that in the paperwork, you're basically saying you're responsible for making sure that the source of the water intrusion has been resolved. But most, homeowners are not going to be that person. They're not going to be their own leak detectors. They're not going to look to see what's actually causing it. They don't know in most cases. So they may think that the leak has been resolved, but let's say you have a slow leak, you may not know. You may not know what's actually causing the issue. Like, let's say the ring around your toilet has been leaking and it's slow, but the water, there's mold in your floors. You don't even know it. And there's now mold behind your walls and you don't know it. But then you come in and you fog it and it feels great, for the first few weeks, because you actually, there's different products that, there's different fogs that have different sort of activities that they are doing. There's some fogs that are weighting the spores down. There's some fogs that are more of a thyme oil that are like a disinfectant. There's some fogs that are like citrus based, some that are hydrogen peroxide based, and the fogging system that we were using, and that and don't get me wrong, like I still fog on every project. There's not a project that I do where I won't fog, but it's a final slice of the pie to make sure that the entire building envelope has has been addressed, because mold doesn't just stay in one place, it transfers. So there is a time and a place for it, but to sell it or to promote it or to market it as an end all be all, and this is going to solve all your problems, unfortunately, it's just not a true datum. And maybe in some climates, maybe if you're in a dry and arid climate, maybe that works, but I don't think that it does, because you still have the source of the problem. And if you don't remove it, it still can reactivate and it can still release, toxic substances. So yeah, to answer your question, it was kind of like an end all be all silver bullet. All you need to do is fog it and then call it a day. And it's just not actually, it's not a true datum.
Yeah, you made a good point. It's a tool in the tool belt. It's an arrow in the quiver.
Yes.
You can utilize it to weigh spores
Absolutely.
down to make cleaning more efficient, right? That's definitely a solution.
That's one way to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But in the UK, fogging is being marketed as mold remediation, which just the word remediation means to remedy. Fogging does not remedy, right?
Right.
Because remedy means you're finding out the source of the problem, you're fixing it, restoring the building back to its original integrity, right? Because buildings aren't designed to be leaky, water damaged buildings, right? They're designed to withstand the test of time. But unfortunately, over time, we have to maintain and repair buildings as needed. Well, fogging does not repair anything, right?
No, not at all.
It is a method of sanitizing or help sanitizing byproducts of sources, but without addressing the sources, it's not remediation. So why do you think it is that, the public at large is getting confused between fogging as one tool in the tool belt, which is what it actually is, versus a total mold remediation solution, which people fall prey to all the time, even to this day?
Well, look, I don't think anybody is happy to call a mold guy. I don't think anybody is like, oh, this is the service that I've always wanted. For most people, it's more they are.
I thought everybody was my friend and wanted to speak to me. You're telling me no?
Yeah. It's just one of those calls that you really don't want to have to make, right? And because you think about it, if you do it based on the stories, that your home is going to basically be deconstructed, and that's the best case scenario. There's people that go in there and like barbarians just, rip everything out and make the problem way worse, especially if they're not professional remediators and they're not using containment. They're not using negative air to blow the spores out, if they're not doing precision cuts and precision demolition, and they're not doing the micro cleaning, the HEPA vacuuming, the damp wipe, and HEPA vacuuming once again, and then after everything is said and done, and you've done all that, you've treated the structural material, you've made sure that's all good, and now you do the fogging. Well, that's a really professional remediator. So if you have somebody that goes in there and says that they're a remediator, they're not putting up containment, they're just kind of taking the jackhammer and the sledgehammer and they're just tearing stuff out. Well, now they've just made the problem way worse, because mold, being a breathing, living organism that wants to survive, that wants to protect its territory, as soon as it feels threatened or attacked or agitated, it's going to release more spores. It's going to release more mycotoxins. And now it's gotten into the AC system, and you're in a much worse predicament, because at one point, before you started, it was in one particular location, and now you've spread it everywhere. So I think that most people are going to be more inclined to the less expensive route, the easier route. It sounds good. It's like, wow, all I have to do is fog, and then everything's done, and I can be back in my home in less than 24 hours. Where do I sign? And it's 1/3 the price. Absolutely. Let's go ahead and do it. The problem is that they're not rectifying. And as you just stated, they're not remediating. They're not actually remedying the situation. They are putting on a Band-Aid. And the fogging and doing fogging right is great as a final touch. And potentially in certain circumstances, like let's say you have a mold bloom that is based on humidity, and your AC broke down, and you do a full HEPA vac, damp wipe, get rid of the contents where there's actual growth in the actual material, you clean the carpets or remove the carpets, then yeah, you can go and sanitize and fog, because you've addressed the humidity issue, you fix the AC unit, you make sure that's not breaking down, you dry the place out, you remove the mold, you clean it all up, and then you've sanitized as a final touch. And then the great aspect of some sanitizing with some products is that the mycotoxins are ultrafine particles, and you can help to dissolve or lift those particles with certain products that are EPA registered for sanitizing or fogging purposes. But not everybody knows how to do that. And for that reason, I think that, I'm not like anti-fogging, but I definitely am no longer like fogging is the end all be all. Absolutely. It's just not a fact, sure, unfortunately.
No, I get that. You made some comments regarding, when fogging might be effective and stuff like that, and some use cases. But I want to be very fair. And you got to remember, everyone listening is looking for information on what's the best way to remediate, how do we remediate. And we made it abundantly clear that fogging is a tool in the tool belt that can be used at the end of the project to help with that micro cleaning.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think the bigger issue is we have an industry problem now where people think the fogging is the end all be all, right? And I don't know about you, and I don't want to make any assumptions for you, but I can tell you in every home I've ever been in, fogging would not have been the answer to the problem. Well, walls had to be opened up, right? Walls had to be opened up. Crawl spaces need to be re-engineered. There's roof leaks that need repairs. There's all these things going on in a building, right? So I don't know how many homes you've been a part of where fogging was the only thing they needed to do, but the percentage couldn't have been that high.
And I think it depends on climate, right? But let's take your example of walls need to be opened up. So Hurricane Idalia just came through Florida. We had storm surge in Tampa Bay that went, a foot high, 2 feet high into homes. They're already starting to get moldy. They're musty. You walk in there, it's nasty. So imagine a year later, everything's dry. The people are sick in the home. They don't know why. Company comes in, says, yeah, we can just fog it. Call it a day. You're done. Okay. The homeowners feel good for a couple months. 3 months later, they're wondering why they're sick again. Well, we already got it remediated. No, you didn't. You got it sanitized. So then when you go in and you open those walls up and you find Stachybotrys black mold, or Chaetomium behind the baseboards, or Aspergillus penicillium behind the cabinets, that is now releasing mycotoxins into the environment every time it gets just enough moisture to reactivate. No wonder the people are sick. Not to mention, they might even have cladosporium in their AC unit, which is also releasing a mycotoxin. So if you don't put on your detective hat and find all the different sources of microbial growth, you're leaving a person in a toxic sandwich that in some cases can absolutely debilitate the people that are living in that home. And it's just not right. It's not fair. You have to make sure that you do it with integrity and you really look deep. And you can't just depend on the independent IEP, the independent environmental professional, to go in and say, oh, this is all you need to do. No, you really need to look, because a lot of the times they're taking air samples and, they can take 3, 4, 5 air samples and they don't find anything. But then you do a deep dive and it's all over the place. And because those air samples, like 70% of the time, are inaccurate. And not only that, the air samples are detecting what? Well, you're using a spore trap. So that's all they're doing. They're detecting spores. What about the mycotoxin? When you're treating people for illness and mold toxicity, are you trying to remove the spores or are you trying to remove the mycotoxins? Myco, Greek word for fungus, toxin, something poisonous. And the doctors that you and I would deal with are trying to get rid of the mycotoxins. And the mycotoxins, those little crevices are like the Grand Canyon for particles that are 0.1 micron, which is basically the size of mycotoxins.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, you make great points. I think the one thing that I want people to take away from this is the fact that fogging is useful as a tool in the course of remediation, but it is not on its own remediation. It's like taking the red pill when you need surgery, right? What's interesting about this whole conversation is if I'm a doctor and you need surgery and I say, you don't need surgery, just take this red pill. It's easier. Half, costs 1% of the cost. And you get sick, I'm getting sued for malpractice, right?
Yeah,
in this industry, we have people telling people, professionals, alleged professionals, whatever you want to call them, telling people, hey, listen, you don't need to do that. Just take the red pill. I know everyone's saying you need surgery, but you don't need surgery. I got this red pill. It's brand new. It's revolutionizing everything. You take this and you're fine. And the problem is, like you said, an air test is done after. Air tests show nothing. Gwyneth Paltrow's house had air tests that showed nothing. It was deeper dives, deeper progressive testing where we found problems, right? So I could do an air test right after. Of course, the results are going to drop. So if that's the gold standard of what remediation is, which sadly, actually, it's been for the past decades, I'm going to show that it's less than outside now, so the house is good. But yet people might feel a difference right off the bat because, yeah, it might be lowering the spore counts, might be breaking them apart into smaller particles. They might feel good for a week or two, and I've had reports of that. But it's after that week or two where they feel 10 times worse. And now you're back in addressing the problem. And by the way, fogging as a remediation tactic is not the cheapest thing in the world either. I mean, I've had clients telling me they've spent $4,000, $10,000 and got no real product out of it, right? And I think for me, covering this subject is so near and dear to me because there's nothing that I dislike more than seeing people waste money on something that isn't going to get them any real value, right? And sadly, it happens all the time. And like I said, in the UK, it's this big growing trend. And they're all over this. They're just fogging homes and saying, you're good to go. That's remediation. And what we're finding out of the UK is people are coming in, they're looking for consults, or they need help because there's no real remediation practices out there where people are doing a good job identifying sources, removing sources, and then removing the byproducts that those sources create, which is one of the bigger problems that we have out there. But we've seen it here too, right? And so I think it's important people really understand that fogging's great at the tail end of things, when you're cleaning up, but there's still mechanical actions that have to happen. Let me put things into perspective for you. When we have a dirty kitchen counter, do you spray something and just walk away?
Absolutely not. No, you got to actually clean that.
You wipe it down, right? You take a paper towel, rag, whatever, and you wipe it down. Why do you think that is?
The mechanical action, because you're just going to be leaving the grime there. You're going to be leaving the pathogenic, particles just sitting there. It's not actual removal of the nastiness.
There's a famous law here that happens to apply to this universe, and it's a particle cannot be created nor destroyed. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have grime on our kitchen counter, right? We spray something. What does that compound actually do? It helps lift and separate these particles, pathogens, etc., from our kitchen counter onto our rag so that the rag can be washed, discarded, what have you, right? Correct, that is the sole purpose of pretty much any cleaning product that we have in existence. Why? Because it's helping us remove the particles, right?
Correct. Yep.
So the theory on some of these, you mentioned fogging has many different products that get fogged. And the theory behind this is that it changes the DNA, it neutralizes, destroys, kills, whatever marketing jargon you want to use that makes people feel good about it. I find that that is inherently dangerous because if anything, it's going to reduce that particle, breaking it apart into smaller particles. Why is that? Right. Because particles cannot be created nor destroyed. They could just be split and new particles can be created amongst them, right? Therefore, if we're going to fog, it's so important that we're damp wiping and cleaning and vacuuming and doing all these things to remove these particles from our environment. And correct me if I'm wrong. And also
air scrubbers and negative air, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, that's a huge part of the remediation aspect, right? Yeah. But let me ask you this. In the fogging world, is there cleaning involved? I'm not saying your world because you've educated yourself. You've decided to elevate yourself and become a professional and do things the right way. But let's go back to younger Brandon, who was introduced to the fogging technologies.
So 2018 Brandon.
2018
right?
Brandon.
Before the epiphany. Oh, yeah. Oh, all we need to do is we just need to come in, fog it. We'll run it through your HVAC. It's going to get behind everything. Don't worry about it. This is going to call it a day. We're going to dry fog this. And, we're going to also put on a protective shield afterwards. And it's going to kill particles afterwards that come and land. You're good. You don't need to do anything else.
I'm going to spray Teflon all over your whole
unfortunately, place. Yeah, like a Scotch Guard for mold. But the problem with that is it's not the most important thing is that you're dealing with people that actually understand the science of what they're doing. And I don't care what trade you're in, if you're an AC guy, if you're a general contractor, if you're a plumber, there's people that understand the science of what they're doing, and there's people that are just repeaters of marketing. And if you deal with somebody that understands the science of it, they're going to be able to solve problems no matter which way it comes at you. And if they can't solve it, they have the contacts for people that can. And how many times have I reached out to you when I'm running into a situation that, hey, I'm like, look, I need some help here, right? And if it's not you, it's Doug Hoffman, the president of Normie, or it's Michael Pinto, who has been doing it for 30 years and trains people on how to remediate for sensitized individuals. So you have access to people because you actually care about your trade and you want to make sure that it's being done right. And you have enough integrity to say, hey, I actually don't know how to solve it at this moment, but I'm going to find out who does. And I think that's really a crucial element. And that's one of the things that, to me, has been a draw to like reading your book, The Mold Medic, to following you on social, and to listening to your podcast. And there's others that I listen to as well, because I feel that they are cutting edge, but they do it with integrity, and they're going to also make sure that it's done right, and that the basics and the foundation and everything else is in place. And if there are new tools, they're willing to look at what they can do, understand the science of it, and make sure that it's applied at the right time, and not kind of throw everything out and say, oh, this new thing will handle everything. And unfortunately, when I had gotten into it, I was a novice and believed the marketing. But I have enough integrity as an individual to continue to train, do the continuing education, and open my eyes and listen and go, wait a second, there might be more to this than I know. I'm going to look at that. And sure enough, especially when I went through it myself physically, after having fogged my house, after having clean air tests, and having off the charts mycotoxin tests, and wondering why I was sick for 6 months, and then finding it behind my walls, and then handling that. And then within 3 weeks, all my symptoms went away. Then I was like, absolutely not. I cannot go to bed at night feeling like I'm doing this the right way and telling people that this is going to solve it, and take their money and tell them, okay, it's all good. And in actual fact, you're potentially setting them up for, to be even worse because it wasn't properly done in the first place.
Brandon, I so appreciate, the evolution of the 2018 Brandon to now. I met you a few years ago, and we've had, a great line of communication between us since then. I always love getting the phone call from you on problems that I can help solve, because I just love trying to help solve problems. And I'll tell you, you'll have no shortage of problems to solve, right? Because every house is built differently. There's 50,000 components in a house. And I think what you said highlights your professionalism, which is really important. We can't, as individuals, be expected to know everything there is to know about a home, right? And that's why there's so many, there's engineers, there's structural engineers, mechanical engineers, right? There's HVAC people, there's plumbers, there's electricians, there's general contractors, there's remediators, there's all these different pieces of the puzzle. We can't be experts in everything. It's impossible, right? No. Our brains can only store so much information. At the end of the day, professionals, what they do is when they don't know the answer to something, they bring in somebody who would know the answer to that, right? And just the other day, I'm at a client's house in LA, looking at their HVAC. I'm not an HVAC expert, okay? But I know something was off. I happen to know an HVAC expert, brought them over there. They found all kinds of problems with the system, with the ventilation plan, in the attic spaces that's affecting the HVAC. It needs ERV systems. It needs dehumidification systems. This thing's leaking air like you wouldn't believe. And the house was sticky, okay? So the point being is, we need to know enough about our profession to know that when there's something wrong, and we might not know how to solve it, but we need to bring a team in to help us, right? And I think that's what makes us so successful in what we do. Now, there are 50,000 companies out there across America, which is crazy to think about. And there are very few of us that have the integrity that we have, that care about helping people, that want to see the right solution in place, and that actually want people to get better from this, right? And I say this all the time, but this is something that we as a community need to come together and rise above, because the reality of the situation is, this is an epidemic. This is not something that can be fixed one house at a time. And unfortunately, with climate change and everything going on, as you can see, the amount of issues, we just had Ian last year, Idalia this year, right? That apparently there's another one that could potentially hit us on the way, right? We're in the season of hurricane season, and hurricanes are getting more ferocious. They're getting more frequent, and they're going to continue to cause more problems. And as long as we have people out there not doing good work, not using the right solutions, not using the right tools in the tool belt, we're going to continue to have this plague of people getting sick. Brandon, I don't know if you know this, but we have never been sicker than we are today. Over 60% of the global population deals with at least one chronic condition. 40% of the global population deals with multiple chronic conditions, meaning two or more. Okay. 74% of the US adult population is on at least one prescription medication. That's a 14 or 19% increase since 2019. I mean, we're headed in the wrong direction, right? And we have better access to medicine, we have better technology. We're much more aware of healthy eating. We have more access to organic produce than ever before. Heck, it's in Costco these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
how do we have all this stuff going in the right direction, but our health is going in the wrong direction? You know, I believe the answer is we're not restoring homes properly, we're not building homes properly, we're not maintaining homes properly. Homes are tighter now than ever before since the 1970s energy crisis with energy efficiency, which means things happen to our home. Less dilution of air means more particles entering the body, more toxins entering the body. So believe me, I think the work we're doing is probably more important than we can ever imagine. But there's not enough of us. And, I think what I hope people take away from is that, first off, you're a great guy doing great things. And, you are 100% helping push the industry in the right direction just by rising above what the industry is. And the second thing
Yeah, I
is,
appreciate that.
the second thing being that um, fogging is not a total remediation. It is only a small part of it at the very end to help with the byproducts. And as long as people get that, then they will be able to make proper decisions. Band-Aid, cheap Band-Aid like solutions, if it's marketed as a cheap Band-Aid like solution and marketed as this is something temporary that can get you through the next month while you figure things out, that'd be one thing. I'd get behind that. I'd say, listen,
Correct.
that's an option.
Correct.
But when it's marketed as a total solution, which it's not effectively anyhow, that's when I have a problem with it, right? Because now people are making decisions thinking it's a total solution, spending hard-earned money. And typically the market for fogging is lower income too. So they need that money to fix things the right way, not to, spend money on something that's going to get them a couple of days of relief and right back at it, or a couple of weeks or whatever it may be. Right. So
Yeah, it's not a partial, it's not a full product. Like you said, it's not a total solution
right,
at all.
right. And I think that's really important. Brandon, where can people learn more about you and what you're doing and find you and all that fun stuff?
Sure. Instagram is a great place to find us. Mold.solutions on IG. We're obviously on Facebook. We also online, moldsolutions.com. And that's really, for me, that name, it was very carefully chosen because I think that just like any problem, you need to make sure that you're doing the equation properly so that you solve it properly. So in order to do that, you have to figure out all the components. So, we're glad to connect with people, but I think that if somebody really wants to interact with us, IG is the best place to find us at mold.solutions.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here with me today and have this, a very important discussion. I know you have a lot going on with everything with the storms. I want you to stay safe and keep doing good work, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you know people that were hit by the storm, it's really important that they solve it the right way. And that is, they have to open up their homes. Nobody wants to open up their home. They don't want to remove the vanities. They don't want to remove the cabinets. And trust me, I don't like telling people that they need to do it. But just like you're saying, if we don't handle that initially, they're going to be sick down the road. And I do think I 100% agree with you that environmental illness and mold toxicity and mycotoxin exposure is probably one of the most underestimated culprits in regards to our physical well-being and the destruction of our immune system. So, I really want to thank you for being a thought leader in this industry and having pushed the envelope way before many of the people in our industry. Even like Michael Pinto, Doug Hoffman, they didn't start doing the training for sensitized individuals until, last year or the year before. But this has been something that you have been pushing and preaching since I first met you, which is back in 2017 or 2018, whatever it was, when we weren't necessarily on the same page. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being strong and having integrity and making sure that people are doing it the right way.
Listen, I was told I was crazy and over the top for many years. It's been quite of a journey over the past 11 years now, since I've been really diving deep into this. But look, I think at the end of the day, it's important that we see this for what it is. Some people might not agree with the methods and madness. Some people might still think things might be over the top. You're doing things very similar to how I do things, right? So I'm sure that comes across to you sometimes too. But at the end of the day, we're not going to lose sleep at night knowing that we did everything in our power to make sure that this space is as healthy as can be, because that's what we're here to do. We're not here to remove a little bit of mold because it's unsightly, right? We're here to remove any microorganism that could be affecting our clients and their health. And I think that's the key. And we're working together to push this industry forward, and I think that's we may not be in the same office. We may not be running down the exact same road. But at the end of the day, everything that we are working towards separately, together, right here on this podcast, all of it is in the right direction. It's moving things forward. They say they're revolutionizing fogging. No, we're revolutionizing this industry
Yeah, yeah.
legitly by helping people solve complex problems that always equates to them feeling better. And there's just no better reward than that. Then you figure out somebody's problem, you check in with them a week later, a month later. How are you doing? I have clients that years ago we helped that are still texting me randomly. I I just thought about you, really appreciate you. I feel so much better. Like, I still feel better after all these years. I'll never forget what you guys did. That's the stuff that makes this all worth it, right?
That's the reward right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's no awards. There's no award ceremony, but
No, no,
the
no, but
reward
that is the reward, knowing
that
that you
is the
changed somebody's
reward,
life.
you
Yeah.
know? And I think, the legacy that you and I stand a chance at leaving behind is people up leveling their professionalism, doing a better job. Um, we could duplicate each other 100 times, and there still wouldn't be enough of us to solve every problem,
That's a fact.
you know? And
Yeah.
so it's our job to lead by example as much as we possibly can. And we're human beings and we're not perfect, but we do everything the best to our ability, And I think that's what helps elevate this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, Mike, I really appreciate you having me on. I firmly believe that when you change somebody's air quality, you actually change their quality of life. That's something I firmly believe. And I appreciate the fact that you're doing that and, being willing to, have somebody like myself on the show, to talk about it because it's important.
Likewise, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. Really appreciate you and keep up the good work.